everyone, I am Talisa with Talisa Aquarius, and for a while now, if you guys have been subscribed to me for the last 2 months or so, you know that I've been wanting to do an experiment with keeping a male and female betta fish together and in a large planted aquarium and then breeding them and just seeing if I can do that successfully. And just kind of, the goal is to have their tank, the aquarium they're kept in, to be as to replicate nature and where they come from as closely as possible. So I've been doing some research and I've done it successfully, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. I want to talk about how it's going, how it's been going, and then I'm going to talk about what I did to set myself up for success. And then at the last of the video, I'm going to talk about mistakes that I made that you do not want to do if you do want to keep a male and female betta fish together. So I'm going to show you guys the tank that these betta fish are currently being kept in and just let you guys know how it's going before I get into details for how I set myself up for success. So this is my male, his name is Kai. And the female that's in here, her name is Starfish. She typically hangs out kind of behind the roots, so I don't see her as much. She comes out and swims around and stuff, but she's not up front and center like the male is. So I got this pair of betta fish 1 week ago today. So today is Wednesday. And last Wednesday, they arrived in the mail. And I just added them to this 40-gallon tank and watched them and seen how things were going. And they did well. They were not biting each other's fins. There was a little bit of chasing and establishing dominance and stuff, but nothing serious at all, nothing out of the ordinary. And the very next day after adding them to this tank, Kai started working on a bubble nest. And 3 days later, so it was, let's see, I got them on Wednesday, so it was Saturday. Saturday morning, I came in here and they were already breeding. Kai and Starfish were already breeding. They were getting along great, obviously. And I was elated. So today's Wednesday. Oh, there's Starfish. He's chasing her away from the bubble nest. He's guarding the bubble nest well. So up here is the bubble nest. Let's see if I can show you guys. And I have a surprise for you guys. Can you see it? There's baby betta fish up in here. Can you see the little microscopic things? I'm trying to hold the camera still, but I'm not doing a very good job of it. Let's see if I can find one for you guys. So yeah, so they bred 3 days later. It was actually less than 36 hours later. They had eggs in the nest, and those hatched a few days after that. And about a day after the betta fish hatched, they were breeding again. So in the course of 6 days, they hatched out a batch of betta fry and already have another batch of eggs up in here in this bubble nest, which is insane. I did not expect it to go like that. I was worried about him being so busy raising fry that he would starve himself, but this morning when I added some frozen brine shrimp, he ate it. He left the nest for a little bit to go eat, so I'm not worried about him getting too hungry. But he is a very busy betta fish. Not only is he keeping fry from falling down to the gravel, he picks them up in his mouth and puts them back up in this bubble nest, but he also is hatching out another batch of eggs. He's watching on those, making sure those don't fall out of the nest as well. So he is one very busy dude. And he kind of just keeps Starfish back over here. If she comes anywhere near the bubble nest, he makes sure she stays away. But as long as she comes out and just kind of stays, down here or back behind all the roots and leaves him alone, he's fine. So she pretty much has the entire 40-gallon tank to herself. And that is why it is so important to have a heavily planted tank for these betta fish. That way Starfish can swim around without bothering him. She's out of his line of sight. He leaves her alone. She leaves him alone. However, she doesn't leave him alone well enough, because just yesterday they were going at it again. So they apparently like each other and get along great. As you can see, Kai His colors are great. He doesn't look stressed at all. He's not missing any of his fins. And Starfish is the same. I don't know if she'll come out so that I can show you guys. But she's also, just this morning, she was looking great. She does not look stressed. She's not missing any fins. And that is crazy because people who breed betta fish the conventional way, a lot of times their betta fish can be kind of torn up when they're finished. Just because betta fish will fight each other. And these two bettas have successfully bred in the course of 6 days, and there is no torn fins, and they do not look stressed. So now I'm starting to question, like, is this actually a safer way to breed betta fish? Because so far this has been pretty successful. Now, I will say it's not as successful of a way to raise the fry, but as far as breeding goes, so far it's been pretty safe. So yeah, to cap off how it's been going, it's really been going great. This is a 40-gallon tank that they're in. I would not keep two betta fish together in a tank that is any smaller than a 40-gallon. I mean, maybe if it was a sorority, you could get away with a heavily planted 20-gallon or 29-gallon. But for a male and female, they definitely need their space. They need lots of plants to block their vision of each other. And they need to just feel comfortable. As you can see, I have tannins in the water to help relieve any stress, or if they do get nipped fins, the tannins in the water will prevent infection in their fins. And because I wasn't really able to show you guys the female betta fish on camera very well, I'm going to bring up some photos and videos of her as I'm talking, and of the male also. These were taken right after I added her to the tank. I would say she's actually gotten a little darker since then and looks even healthier and nicer. So now that I have given you guys an overview of how it's going, keeping a male and female betta fish together, I wanted to talk about how I arrived at this decision, what I did to make it successful like it is. And first off, I've been keeping betta fish for almost 7 years now, so I have experience. So my number one recommendation is don't do this if you don't have experience with betta fish. If you don't have experience with keeping them, with their behavior, with, if you don't know how to judge whether betta fish is really aggressive or really docile, I wouldn't recommend trying this just yet. Like, get some experience under your belt first. And secondly, I did a lot of research. I've done a lot of research into keeping betta fish together. I've watched videos on YouTube and Instagram of people that kept male and female betta fish together successfully. My number one video that I recommend, I'm going to link it down in the description of this video, and that was Fishery Alexander Williamson. He has a 20-gallon long tank, and he has 2 male betta fish in there, and I think 3 or 4 females. And like, that sounded like a small tank to me, but he does it successfully. He knows what he's doing. He's a much more experienced fish keeper than me. And he explained the genetics of betta fish and how to keep them together successfully without them being stressed out. And he had a lot of links in the description of his video. So if you go watch the video, click on the links as well. A lot of them are very scientific and they didn't make a lot of sense to me, but he does a good job breaking down the facts of science behind all the genetics of the betta fish and explaining it and really dumbing it down. So if you watch the video, you probably are good to go after that, unless you just want to like nerd out and look at all the science facts. And one of the things that he had mentioned in his video was do not keep long-finned betta fish together. So that's why I have 2 plakat betta fish. Even though a female's fins are shorter naturally, they're still longer if they're not plakat. Like, if you get a half-moon female, she's still going to have long fins. So I would definitely go with a plakat male and a plakat female. That's what I've done. And he said that, betta fish flare to establish boundaries, to establish their territory in their tank. And the longer the fins are, the larger that betta fish looks and the more threatening it looks. And so the other betta fish is more likely to take that the wrong way and actually get into a fight with it. So, and also the longer fins kind of slow them down. So if they're trying to get away from the other betta fish, they're more likely to have those long fins torn and nipped at because they can't swim as fast. So if you get 2 plakat betta fish, that would be great. The next thing was, he said that red in betta fish is associated with aggressiveness and they're more dominant. So my female is yellow and blue. She has no red on her. And my male has very minimal red. He's mostly kind of like blue, white, and orange. And another thing I recommend if you're going to keep a male and female betta fish together is be prepared for the worst. Like, I have multiple tanks set up with no betta fish in them, with catappa leaves in them, just waiting. You know, if the male becomes too aggressive to the female or vice versa, I can take one out and he or she can have a tank all to themselves. Well, maybe there would be some small schooling fish. I think I have some tanks set up that have no fish in them. They're just some shrimp, right? But I have the catappa leaves in there just in case they have their fins nipped. The tannins in the water will prevent infection. And then I would add some aquarium salt as well. I would have the tank warm to help reduce stress. So just in case this doesn't, I mean, they've only been together for a week, right? Right now it's working out great, but it may take a turn for the worst, and I am prepared if it does. I watch them closely. I watch their behavior. You just seen earlier the male was really getting after the female. He was chasing her, saying, "Get away." But as soon as she got out of his line of vision, he was fine. He went back to the babies and started tending them. And so far, that's the only aggression that's been going on, is him just defending his bubble nest. But when she starts feeling flirtatious, she'll just get kind of bold and swim up to him, and they'll start breeding again. So I really don't think her life is in danger leaving her in the tank. I think they actually get along quite well. And now I just want to take some time to address concerns that people have, understandably so. If you follow me on Instagram, you've seen me post a reel of the male and female betta fish interacting together, and people are like, "What? You have a male and female together?" There was some mixed emotions going on the post, and I just told people, like, be on the lookout for this video. I'll be explaining it later. I wanted to address those concerns. First off, as I said earlier, I really do not recommend you do this if you don't have first-hand experience caring for betta fish, and if you don't have first-hand experience caring for heavily planted tanks. Now that I know how to take care of planted tanks, I'm much more confident that I can keep a very heavily planted tank like this one and keep it thriving so that the fish and plants can all be healthy and they can live together in harmony. I also want to say that I would never purposefully put a fish in harm's way just for views on YouTube. I've done my research. This is something I've been looking into for a lot longer than way before I even started talking about it on YouTube. I talked about it with my local fish store owner. I've talked about it on YouTube. I've watched videos about it, and I was kind of looking into it a few years ago, but I just did not have the knowledge to make it work at all. So I feel like I am well equipped now to be able to do it. And like I said, I have a backup plan if it doesn't work out. I'm monitoring it closely. As you can see, it's going quite well. But yeah, I just wanted not necessarily defend myself, but kind of explain myself. I'm not just doing this for views or to just be like, oh, we'll just see how it goes and be all flippant about it, and the next day they're both dead, right? That would be horrible. That's not what's going on here. But yeah, I definitely understand your guys' concerns that you have as you see me keeping them together, and I will definitely keep you guys updated. If things go wrong, I will update you guys. If they continue going well, I will update you guys. And now I would like to dive into the mistakes that I made as I was doing this experiment. Obviously, I've only been doing it for a week, so I'm sure I'll have more advice on it later in the future. But number one mistake was I have other fish in this tank. So when the male and female betta fish are breeding and the female releases her eggs, sometimes the other fish will go eat some of them before the male can catch all of them in his mouth and go put them up in the bubble nest where they're safe. Also, I'm afraid, I haven't seen this happen, but I'm afraid that as the baby betta fish fall down, You know, maybe the schooling fish will go eat some of them before the male can catch them all and put them back up in the bubble nest. So far, I've just seen him going and catching them and putting them in the bubble nest. He's a great dad. But definitely do not add other community fish to the tank. Now, I know that some people do add community fish to their betta community tank simply as like dither fish. So if two betta fish are chasing each other and some other fish are kind of in their way, they'll get kind of distracted and leave the other fish alone. And if those fish are swimming around peacefully, then the betta fish knows there's no danger. However, because I set this tank up specifically to breed the betta fish, it's not good for me to have other fish in the aquarium. Now, if it's strictly a bottom-dwelling fish, like a Corydora catfish, which I do have one of those in here, and the Cory catfish leaves the betta fish alone, and it leaves the bubble nest alone, it does not cause any drama in the aquarium. So you could have Cory catfish in the bottom. You could probably also have like autosynclus catfish because those kind of stay out of the way. But yeah, just something, or a pleco. I also have a pleco in here. Plecos are great for aquariums like this. But yeah, number one mistake was having other fish in. And I thought about catching them out, but because the driftwood takes up so much of the tank and there's so many plants and roots, it's really difficult to get a net in there and like catch the fish out. Plus, I don't want to disturb the bubble nest in any way. I don't want to make baby bettas fall down. So as of now, it's kind of like it is what it is. We'll see how many betta fish end up surviving. And I have thought about kind of just taking a cup and like scooping out the nest and like seeing how many baby bettas I could get and growing them out in a different tank. So I might experiment with that, but not right now. Right now, my goal is to just have two betta fish living in a natural aquarium and raising their fry naturally and just seeing how many, if any, survive. But if any of them do survive, it's going to be like survival of the fittest, so it's going to be like the best of the best that are surviving. Like, I shouldn't have to cull any of them off, because if any of them have a swimming disability, they're just going to be eaten. I know that sounds kind of harsh, but you know, it's natural. I like keeping my tanks as naturally as possible. Now, if they just continue breeding and I don't ever get any betta fry that grow up at all, then I'm going to do something different. But right now, it's an experiment, and yeah, I would like to just see how many of them survive, if any. The tank is very heavily planted. There is microorganisms in here for the baby betta fish to feed off of, so I'm hoping that at least like 20 to 30 of the fry can survive, but maybe I'm being a little too optimistic with that number. And another mistake that I made was when I added, so my betta fish arrived in the afternoon on Wednesday, I added them to the tank, and they were very focused on each other, and just both of them were flaring at each other and trying to establish dominance, and just really focused on each other. Like, they wouldn't leave each other alone. They just kept chasing each other around, and they would kind of lose sight of each other and they'd be fine for a while, and then they would be exploring the tank and they'd start chasing each other around again. So I have one other female betta fish. I'm sure you guys know where this is going. I have one other female. She's the only other female I have, and her name is Rainy, and she's a half-moon betta fish, so she has long fins and she can't swim as fast as the other two betta fish, but I thought, well, she'll be a good distraction. There will be more of a pecking order, right? So I add her to the tank. It worked. They all just kind of got distracted. They started establishing dominance, and they kind of just stayed in their parts of the tank and were getting along well. Rainy got like a little nip on one of her fins, and that was it. She was fine. She didn't look or act stressed, so I left her in there. The next morning, they were all doing good. No new fin tears, nothing. They were all acting good, not acting stressed. However, that next day, my male betta fish started building a bubble nest, and Rainy was infatuated with him. She wanted to be the one breeding with him, so there was sort of some drama because he rejected her and he wanted to breed with the other female, and Rainy just would not leave him alone. Like, she was adamant she wanted to breed with him. She was like holding eggs, she was blushing, she had like the breeding stripes, and she wanted to breed with him. And so because he kept chasing her away from the bubble nest, her fins that next night, so it would have been like night 2 of them being together. The next morning her fins were like shredded, and it would have been day 3, and the male and female Kai and Starfish, they were breeding together and they were chasing Rainy away. Her fins were torn, and I was like, oh no. Like, I was happy that they were breeding, but I was sad that Rainy had kind of taken the brunt of the abuse. So I pulled Rainy out without disturbing the 2 betta fish that were breeding. Like I said, she doesn't swim very fast, and she kind of just swam up to the net because she's curious. So I just pulled her out, and like I said, I had backup tanks waiting, so I added her to her old 20-gallon tank that she was in, you know, a few days prior to that. There was some catappa leaves in there. I added some aquarium salt, and I'm going to show you guys her. So this is Rainy. She's in this 20-gallon tank. It's a mess right now. My lights are not bright enough, so the plants are kind of struggling. But as you can see, she has no raw on her fins. She has new fin growth. She doesn't act stressed at all. She's being very active. She's interacting with me a lot. She's interacting with the endlers in here. While I'm sad that her fins are this tattered, I am thankful that they're healing well and that she acts good. I think she's a little bit miffed at the rejection, but I'm sure she'll get over it. Now, I will say, I don't know if me adding a second female to the tank in and of itself was a mistake, because it did help the betta fish to get along better. However, the mistake was she was not a placotte. You know, you can see she's blue. She was the right color, but she has long fins. And she just would not leave the male alone. That was part of it. She's kind of dumb. But yeah, so her long fins they were able to catch up to her and nip her a lot easier. And, you know, maybe it would be a good idea for me to have multiple females in the tank. I'm not sure. I'm not planning to add females right now at all. However, if I was to add any in the future, they would definitely need to be placottes. But because the male and female have already bred, I don't think, like, they're familiar with each other. I don't think I need another female in there to distract the male from chasing just one female. Plus, if I had another 1 or 2 females in this tank, the chance of survival for the fry would go down drastically, because there would be that many more fish in the tank to eat them when they're still really small. I think that is all for this video. If you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them down below. And thank you guys so much for watching.